Hello there, this is Julia Olayanji. I'm so glad to welcome you to this channel where we talk about different topics related to food, health, and sustainability. Our goal is to make it very easy for consumers to make informed decisions about what they eat on a day-to-day basis. We do this by bringing experts your way. By that I mean scientists, innovators, policymakers, food industry leaders, and entrepreneurs to tell you about what they do, why they do it, and how they impact you on a day-to-day basis. Today, I'll be sharing with you a conversation I had with Jessica Wong, the founder of Jack and Friends. She's focused on bringing tasty and nourishing plant-based products to the market. So let's learn more about Jack and Friends in this conversation. Cheers. Hi, Jessica. Welcome. It's so glad to connect with you today to learn more about your brand, what you're doing, and your motivation for what you do, really. So glad to have you. Welcome.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Julia. I'm glad to
Yeah,
be here and happy to share more on Jack and Friends.
that's great. That's really great. So before we get started with talking about Jack and Friends, I really want to kind of like talk briefly about what's going on in our community today with COVID-19 pandemic and how it has affected a lot of brands, not just in the food industry alone. It's pretty much across all industries. Have you felt any impact directly on your brand, or has it been more of a spike, or how has that played out with you?
It's definitely been a mixed bag. I think with Jack and Friends being a shelf stable snack product, it definitely hasn't hit us as hard as certain industries like restaurant or hospitality, food service, things like that. For us, we definitely felt the most impact in two areas with supply chain and also wholesale. So for supply chain, I'm sure all food businesses can kind of
Relate to
commiserate
that.
that everything was so delayed, and there's just a lot of difficulty in logistics and making sure that certain ingredients were getting to certain places on the right timelines and things like that, especially in probably the first 2 months, I would say, of when the pandemic really hit. And then the other area with wholesale for us specifically, we're in these independent specialty grocers. So we're not in larger chains quite yet, just due to capacity. And those independent retailers are really the ones that got hit the hardest in terms of their foot traffic, because everyone was kind of flocking towards more mainstream conventional retail outlets, and these smaller grocers either had to close up shop depending on where their locations were, or were just experiencing a lot less foot traffic, especially during those beginning months. So that affected our wholesale business, but thankfully, we have been focusing on D2C, so we haven't, been hit too hard overall.
That's good. That's really good. Glad to hear that. So we'll move on to talk about Jack and Friends some more. Tell me, why did you start this company and what motivated you to start the company?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to when I was a food science student at Cornell. I kind of had this tough decision to make as a senior there, where I could either take a full-time return offer at one of the largest snack companies in the world that I previously interned at, or I could start my own venture, which would later become Jack and Friends. And the reason why I took the very non-traditional route and
Mhm.
decided to start my own venture instead was because I wanted to create a brand that really embodied inclusivity. And what I mean by that is our mission is all about creating food for anyone and any lifestyle. So the way that we're approaching that with our first product line is with this plant-based jerky made out of jackfruit and pea protein that's not only vegan and top allergen free, but also a good source of protein and fiber with no added sugar. So no matter your lifestyle, your diet, allergy restriction, you can still have this really delicious snack without having to sacrifice nutrition.
That's great. That's really great. So when you talk about uh, your ingredients, how you, what goes into your product, what are your values, core values that guides those decisions? And where I'm coming from with that question is trying to draw attention to the importance of each ingredient we put in our product.
Mhm.
Why? Because when people consume those products over time, do have impact. And sometimes you might be thinking short term, but it's also good to consider the long term effect of what we feed people with. So I'm always curious to know how innovators like yourself think about that aspect of food production? What guides your decision? Why? What do you pick and why?
Mm-hmm. I think for me personally, and for a lot of other food entrepreneurs or food brands, it's really all about figuring out which ingredients will, create the best quality product, and something, and create the product that, you yourself would want to eat as a consumer. So thinking, putting yourself in the shoes as a consumer and making sure there's a lot of transparency in that supply chain. So, when you're sourcing different ingredients, really looking into, where it's coming from, how it's produced, really doing your research on, you know, every ingredient that is going into your food, and that can be a range of things from like safety and quality to ingredient deck if you're buying something that isn't a single ingredient, making sure that uh, that ingredient deck, like I said, is going to meet your standards for the product that you want to put out,
Mm.
with your brand on it.
And when you think about the future of food, where do you see the food industry in the next 5 years, and how is your brand contributing to that, or supporting that?
Hmm. I think, especially looking at the food industry now and how probably COVID has accelerated that, people are really looking for food that not only tastes great, but is good for them and is functional. So really having a good balance between the two where, you don't have to give up taste, texture, other sensory qualities, but you want to know that the food that you're putting in your body is going to benefit you in some way. So, with the natural or better for you foods categories really, on the incline, especially with, this pandemic, I think people are really focusing on those aspects. And that's a wide range of areas in terms of, functional foods. It could be anything from like uh, mental health to, gut health, etc. So there's a lot of different areas that I think are going to be up and coming and will definitely be emerging in the next 5 years for the food industry.
Right. I absolutely agree with you. We're currently working on a survey, um, on a study rather. We have a lot of input from people, and we've seen a huge shift in
Mhm.
consumer perspective and consumer, yeah, because in terms of what is good for them and how they approach food, a lot of them are more conscious of how the food um, how the food interacts with their body now. A lot of, before COVID, because we had a comparison before COVID and post COVID, a lot of people indicated that they're very, very conscious of the impact of food on
Mhm.
their health post COVID now than before COVID came into the picture. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely, the food industry is moving in that direction.
Mhm.
Final words. When people think about your brand, what words do you want to come to mind?
Mhm. I think the main word that we kind of center our brand around and kind of what our whole platform about is inclusivity. So, our motto is creating, our mission is creating food for anyone in any lifestyle, and our tagline for our jerky is plant-based jerky for any lifestyle. So it's really embodying this platform of inclusivity where, no matter if you're a vegan fitness enthusiast or like a sleep deprived student that wants a healthy snack during study sessions, or an allergen sensitive family that wants, find a snack that's a one size fits all for your spouse and your kids. It's really about creating food that fits into any lifestyle and diet, and tastes great while doing it.
That's great. That's really great. So, now that we're done with Jack and Friends, one final question for you will be outside of that. Since you've gone through the process of starting a company from scratch, you know what it takes. So, if someone is watching this and he or she is thinking about starting a food brand, do you have one or two um, tips that you would like to share with them, to get them started or to guide them in the process?
Mhm. I think, especially if you're just getting started in the beginning, it's all about like research. Like, make sure you're setting a really solid foundation for your company before you're like gearing up to go out of the gate. I think all of us, if we have this really great idea or a really great product, you want it, out in the market as soon as possible. But I think taking a step back and, being more patient to lay the groundwork for your company or LLC, or just like that administrative work in the beginning, but also R&D for your actual product in the beginning as well is so helpful. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to food entrepreneurs where they kind of rushed their product out of the gate, and there were just a lot of unforeseen challenges, either with supply chain or the product itself, that just set them back a lot in the future, where if they took a little bit more time in the beginning to make sure all of those kinks were worked out, it would have been much smoother sailing, right out of the gate. So I think that's probably my biggest piece of advice. Just make sure that you have all your ducks lined up, and you're very satisfied with the product before you officially release it.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jessica, for making the time to connect today. It's been great talking with you.